Hey everyone, welcome back with Bino Mac, where today we have another comparison video. Now, last month we looked at No Mercy and Smackdown 2, two games made at the same time, but by different companies. Well, this is AKI Sunday, so let's compare two AKI games side by side. A lot of people compare Revenge and No Mercy, but since we did No Mercy last month, let's change it up with the direct sequel to Revenge, WWF Wrestlemania 2000. Heck, I've heard people refer to Wrestlemania 2000 as the WWF's version of Revenge. I'm gonna compare gameplay, rosters, single player modes, and more. While this is a one-on-one battle, I'm not necessarily trying to convince anyone to pick one over the other, but rather celebrate the differences these games have and how far we've come from game to game. So no opinions here, just straight facts, and if you want to shout out your personal choice in the comments and spark some debates of your own, that's fine. Let's just keep it civil though. After all, we're just talking about some games we like to play in our free time after all. And if you have time, like and subscribe to see more AKI content every single Sunday, or ring the notification bell for the daily videos. But with that out of the way, today we'll put WCW and the WWF head to head once more to relive the Monday Night Wars one last time. Alright folks, before we get into the bulk of the video, let's get into the backstory of these games a little bit. WCW nWo Revenge was the third but also last WCW game released on October 26, 1998, which was right around the absolute peak of the WCW as a whole. This was reflected by the sales of the game, selling a total of around 1.88 million. But around this time, WCW would quickly go in the decline, while the WWF, World Championships Wrestling's main competition in the pro wrestling landscape, was just about to enter its hottest period as well. The AKI Corporation would drop WCW as its representative for their wrestling games and pick up the World Wrestling Federation, with their first release being WWF Wrestlemania 2000 on October 12th of 1999 in Europe and November 18th, 1999 in North America. The sales of WrestleMania 2000 would reach around 1,140,000 copies sold, which ain't bad for the first WWF AKI title. But sales numbers ain't everything, so with that data explained, let's get into the real comparisons of these games and see what was on offer for these giants of the Monday Night Wars. These games have almost identical gameplay, so I'll explain the classic AKI Corporation formula before explaining the different styles seen. So AKI games are known for their legendary AKI grapple system, which is meant to replicate on-screen match paces. We have weak grapples, which should be your go-tos to start off, as these are basic moves such as arm wrenches, eye rakes, takedowns, and such to wear your opponent. Once you build up an appropriate amount of momentum, you can take a chance with strong grapples, which are your power and signature techniques. However, these are much easier to reverse, so it's better to pace yourself. Once your momentum bar is blinking, you can flick the analog stick to gain access to your special finishing maneuvers, with as many as you can pull off in a short time frame. That is an extremely brief explanation of the controls, as there are strikes and a variety of different situations you will find yourself in that take advantage of these same rule sets, but just know that these games are legendary for the variety they offer, as well as the simplicity of pulling off any attack you want in these games. The differences of these games are minor, but significant enough that they stand out. First off, Revenge introduced the combo meter to American audiences, which allows you to strong grapple, then press B so that you can unleash a set amount of punches and kicks that can do devastating damage to your opponents. Reversal is possible for each strike, however. Also of note is that with a special meter, you can unleash up to 10 strikes at the start of the combo. This wasn't well received at the time, but it's only limited to a few wrestlers with more martial arts based fighting styles such as Goldberg, Ultimo Dragon, Yugi Nagata, and Eric Bischoff, just to name a few. WrestleMania 2000 would remove this feature but added in the ability to move your opponents around slowly when in control of a grapple, which sounds small, but when you have the option to slam your enemies where you want to, it can create an oh so important sense of control that can always change the situation. It's always important to think a few steps ahead, and this feature helps you set up the match on your terms. As far as match types go, both games have single one-on-one matches and tag team matches. Revenge has the exclusive handicap match option for a 2-on-1 affair, while WrestleMania has the exclusive rights to the triple threat and cage match. Both games allow you to have no tag option for that tag team matches, along with hardcore options, lumberjack, submission only matches. The final match type option worth noting is that in WrestleMania 2000, they allowed you to have a first blood match in which the first wrestler to bleed would lose. That's mostly it for differences in gameplay though, so let's move on. The rosters are totally different in this game since they were different wrestling companies. They emphasized the variety that these companies offered and captured moments in time that wrestling fans will never forget. WCW wrestlers were separated into factions mostly. For example, we have stars from the nWo Black and White, such as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, The Giant, and Scott Steiner. In the nWo Wolfpack, we have legends of the industry like Kevin Nash, Lex Luger, and Sting. Raven's Flock appears featuring the man himself alongside Kidman and the rest of his misfits. Then, the remaining World Championship Wrestling talent is divided into 4 generic WCW columns. WCW 1 are the main event draws such as Goldberg, Bret Hart, and Booker T. WCW features memorable mid-card acts like the British Bulldog, Jim Neidhart, and Meng. WCW 3 had some remaining lower card wrestlers like Stevie Ray and Yugi Nagata, and finally, in WCW 4, there are the now famous cruiserweight competitors. Rey Mysterio Jr., Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, and Dean Malenko would all become future stars in the WWE, while there are still some that never reached a big success but are still remembered fondly, such as Juventud Guerrera and Psychosis. Also available are 2 sections devoted to Japanese wrestlers that are overhauled with fictional names and likenesses to avoid copyright. Can't forget about good old Dave Ken or Dr. Frank. Even these guys are remembered and missed by die-hard fans. On the WWF side of things, we have the biggest stars in sports entertainment history during the most cartoony era of the Attitude Era. They are all sectioned off, starting with their position on the card at the time. So we have industry leaders such as Stone Cold, The Rock, The Undertaker, and Mankind in Superstars 1, X-Pac, Billy Gunn, and Ken Shamrock, who were upper mid-card stars in Superstar 2. Superstar 3 features mid-carders with heavy storyline involvement, including Test, Bossman, and the Acolytes. Superstar 4 are lower card wrestlers but still legends in the industry, with a few that were just getting their foots in the door like Edge and Christian, D'Lo Brown, and the Hardy Boys. Superstars 5 are those who were less popular like Hardcore Holly, Steve Blackman, and the Headbangers. Then we just have jobbers like the Blue Meanie, Too Much, and Meat, who really saw TV time. A few more sections dedicated to old guys, divas, and hidden characters are what's left, and overall both games have massively stacked rosters. Chris Jericho and Big Show up in both games as wrestlers moving from company to company was a regular occurrence at the time, but overall, you can't go wrong with either company at the time, since the cards were littered with main event talents and mid-carders waiting for their opportunities to move up the cards themselves. This is a real matter of choice in wrestling presentation and style, and quite frankly, I think looking at the rosters of these games really demonstrate how important it is to have different, unique presentation and styles, as well as the importance of competition itself. Next up, we have career modes. Overall, these modes are pretty basic by today's standards, but were an absolute blast to play back in the day. Even today, the gameplay is so good that the lack of storylines doesn't really matter. So for Revenge, we have Championship Mode. This basically amounts to the equivalent of an arcade-style ladder mode from a fighting game like Mortal Kombat or Tekken. You pick which belt to fight for, which includes the United States Heavyweight held by Curt Hennig, the Tag Team titles held by the Faces of Fear, and the Cruiserweight Championship, which is exclusive to that weight class and occupies the waist of Billy Kidman. Two unlockable belts are the World Heavyweight and Television title, both held by Roddy Piper and Chris Kanyon respectively. Once you beat the title holders, you unlock them for free play and have the choice to play as a new challenger once more, or you can do another 10 matches to defend your title. Nothing big, but not bad at the time. The real replayability in Revenge comes from the high score system though. For all match types and all 5 championship mode paths, you get a score at the end of your matches that you can then rank in and put your initials on the high scoreboard that you can then check out in the options menu later. This was a big feature of the time and one of the reasons Revenge is so legendary for those who enjoyed it back in the day. On the WWF side of things, we have a season mode. Road to WrestleMania has you pick a main wrestler and a tag partner. Then you start in April having weekly matches trying to maintain a good enough win-loss record to make it on the card for the few pay-per-view events. The actual end goal is to win the Royal Rumble match and then the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship title belt at the WWF's biggest event of the year at WrestleMania. You can win other titles along the way, and if you didn't make it to the WrestleMania main event, you can try again. There are minimal cutscenes, and it's possible to not get any promos through the majority of the playthrough. You also unlock wrestlers in this mode, but conditions need to be met. For example, winning the King of the Ring gets you a world title shot early at SummerSlam. Winning the belt there unlocks Dude Love. Obtain the Hardcore title belt and defend it 3 times to unlock Cactus Jack. Even the wrestler you select matters in this regard, as playing as The Undertaker or Test for a few months unlocks you Paul Bearer and Stephanie McMahon, who were their managers at the time. Just like Revenge, there isn't any real reason to replay the mode after unlocking everyone, but if you want to experience being a WWF wrestler competing on the card on a weekly basis, it isn't the worst option, especially at the time. Overall, these were solid additions for their time. The career modes are kind of what separates these games from me. In Revenge, we have the option of changing the attires or colors of pre-existing wrestlers on the roster. Nothing too special, as even games like Warzone and Attitude had the option to create new superstars. Better than nothing though. WrestleMania 2000 continues the trend of being able to edit superstars already in the game, but now we have the chance to create up to 16 of our own. We can name them, create entrances, movesets, 4 unique attires, and set their fighting styles too. This adds so much more to the game, allowing us to create our own overpowered characters, or even recreating superstars from the past, present, or future. Also creatable are up to 8 championship belts, which you can name, then pick a template of the titles used in the WWF at the time. The game would keep track of your match records for the individual belts, and you trade them with your friends if you so desired. Creatable content wasn't everything for fans at the time, but nowadays it's mandatory. So while these creation features are slim today, they were both excellent additions to both games during their heydays. WCW nWo Revenge didn't really have any extra content on offer, but it is worth noting that the Battle Royal mode was a huge selling point at the time. You could have up to 40 wrestlers overall, duke it out one after the other with your choice of a mix of rules including ring out, pins, submissions, or TKO enabled. This mode is still remembered fondly by the fans of this game today. WrestleMania 2000 gives us the options to create a pay-per-view event, host a King of the Ring tournament, or join in on the Royal Rumble with a new Team Battle feature. You can still have up to 40, but if Team Battle is picked, you can select how many wrestlers each player can choose. The player that survives is the winner, of course. You can see that the game continued to evolve to add more and more modes every release, even though they were simply a year apart, showing the love that these developers had for creating the best games they could. Once again, I'm not here to tell you which game is better. Even when comparing what both has to offer side by side, their legacies are different. The time periods and other games that companies made later also had an effect on how people would look at these titles. Another thing worth mentioning is that these were based off of opposing wrestling promotions, so even if one has more content than the other, the rosters and arenas themselves are a direct influence to how one might remember and look back on these titles. A WCW fan may not get as much out of a WWF game simply because of it not being what they are familiar with. All in all, I think it's safe to say though that this is remembered as the peak of gaming for wrestling fans for a reason. Two amazing titles with solid modes and the best gameplay on offer, and you have a winning formula for the customers. You let me know in the comments down below what y'all think is the better choice and why. If enjoyed, please like and subscribe for daily content including AKI based videos every single Sunday, including more comparisons, playthroughs, reviews, and more. But above all else, please remember to have a nice day.